Hey guys, John Loxley here. So, back with our probably the final installment of Hell and High Water. I don't know if you can see Jack right here on the side. Come a little bit closer, Jack, baby. Come a little bit closer. Oh my goodness. Okay, fine. So he's going to join me here because he wants to encourage me reading the thing. And yeah. There we go. Also, I just want to say I did listen to one of the previous episodes of this, and you definitely could hear him rubbing against the microphone and the microphone stand and all that stuff. Yep, so we got the little squirrel tail going. He is very happy. They just ate. So normally they leave me alone when that happens, but nope. They're all amped up now. So I'm going to drink a little bit of this beer. Oh, okay. Oh, you can see, you can see Jack's head. This is Dogfish Head Super Grouse or Super Gross or something like that. It's like a kind of like a wine cooler, I guess. It's like a not really though. It's a sour beer with like fruit flavors. That's why it's purple. It's good. It's pretty good. All right, number 13 for the record. Crippled by the emotional highs and lows, I became acutely aware of how little energy I had left. Bless you, Jack. Barely enough to keep walking. The pain in my leg had dulled, stiffness having taken its place. My exhausted mind muffled thoughts like static from a dead television channel. I was only going through the motions. It took all of my effort just to put one leg in front of the other. All I could think about was getting back to the surface. My desperation was becoming more visceral by the moment. Of course I'd find an escape pod. Of course I'd be rescued. Of course I'd soon be back on the surface, enjoying any number of life's simplest pleasures. I had to make an active exercise of pushing those thoughts away. Preemptive celebration only puts you at greater risk. I tuned out the remnants of outside stimulus until I registered only what was right in front of me. Mostly endless darkness, of course. And Jack decides to lay down. That's good. The dull, muted color of the pipeline hugging the periphery of my vision as it stretched out into the black infinity. Arcing in and out of the sediment like a monstrous metal worm. This stretch of my journey was the most unnerving experience of my life. Too tired and bitter to cry. One foot in front of the other, over and over, forward. It's one of the shapes my dreams still take. I'm in the suit walking in an inky black void. But the surface has no sediment, just shallow black water. Me and my reflection. There's no ocean, just an unnatural vacuum, a never-ending, surreal, black expanse. After my rescue and subsequent recovery, I began reading about other people's true life survival stories. One survivor recalled hearing pop music blaring out from the ether during a bout of dehydration. Another man described how he believed he was joined by a deceased relative while stranded in the deep wilderness. Another, stranded at sea, described seeing a vision of himself riding a horse to dry land across the ocean's surface. Those stories, selflessly conveyed for the record, are comforting to me because they prove my experience was not unique to others who've survived isolation and unfavorable odds. Actually, I think there's a either Animal Planet or Discovery Channel like little series called I Should Have Died or something like that. It's pretty interesting, actually. It's about these. It's like they kind of reenact some of the what happened. And they show you like pictures and documents and stuff. They make it kind of like a documentary. It's pretty neat. There were moments on that walk I even thought I might already be dead. Like maybe it happened when I wasn't paying attention. Too many Twilight Zone marathons, I suppose. It's difficult to describe, but it felt like the closest thing to death that you can experience without actually dying. With the darkness around me and only a glimmer of light from my suit, it was easy to battle with existential dread. Jeez. Sorry, guys. basically my bedtime, actually. I could have been walking amongst ancient ruins or the most awe-inspiring mineral deposits ever seen, and I wouldn't have noticed. The darkness was all-consuming, all-controlling, like there was nothing else. That actually reminded me, there's this one part in Subnautica. What is it called? The Sparse Reefs, I believe. It's like you go into this area and there's just these spires going straight up, and they look like coral or something like that. But in the current, in the full release, it's fairly bright. Like depending on the biome that you're in, the water changes a different color, and there's more or less ambient light. It's still fairly bright. It's like daytime. Even when it's nighttime, you could still see pretty well. Originally, or at least somewhere in the middle, when they were doing the early access thing, it was dark. It was like super dark. So it was really hard to see, and maybe that's what they changed with the color settings, where you can change it to like vivid or cinematic or whatever it was. I just remember it being like far more terrifying the first time I played and got to that part. And then, it was still unfinished, so I played about to there, and then I stopped. And then I played it once it got fully released. And it was just different. Not worse necessarily, but that part was definitely not as scary. So, that's something. I just wanted to see green fields before I died. Vast expanses of gently waving grass dotted with poppies along the California coast where I spent my childhood. I was feverish in the need to feel even the smallest scrap of leaf or a single blade of grass between my fingers, to look upon some familiar fragment of the surface one last time. That's what the mind does when you're on the precipice. It recalls loved ones and other signs of life to motivate your primal survival instincts. The purpose is to induce a sort of internalized second wind. It's quite common, though you can't feel it happening. It's the subconscious mind coming through in a pinch. Ironically, I once sought solitude, yearned for it even. That's why I never mind working all those hours in a grocery store back room, saving up for that ridiculous clunker of a car. I longed for escape, and she was my ticket. Eyes filled with nascent dreams, I drove away to escape a controlling mother. Looking back now, I know it was my own home I needed to escape, and the memories of my mother were bound up in every square inch of it. Whenever I could scrounge up the gas money, I'd hit the road. Though I was alone, I wasn't lonely. Whether in the mountains near Lompoc, absorbing the beautiful breadth of the sky and ocean in parallel, or atop Hazard Peak, gazing down upon all the magic of nature, I was on my own, and it was wonderful. This walk at the bottom of the ocean, however, was another beast. It was the kind of ordeal that makes you doubt the choices you've made in life. I wondered if I deserved this for everything I've done wrong in life, for letting people down, for Cora. I don't believe in karma, but surely it was my choices alone that had led me here. Even after another half hour of walking, my depleting oxygen was the only proof of progress. My resolve remained. If I was going to die down there, it wouldn't be due to a lack of trying, but I was getting more and more frustrated. I forced myself to remember long walks I'd made through the wilderness, to think about all the rigorous training we'd endured. I thought about my first few sea walks. It was hard to stay focused, and those thoughts sort of ran together. My imagination created a hodgepodge of a memory, a bizarre dream out of sequence. I'd finally reached my breaking point, and then I saw it, a faint series of glowing lights in the distance. I paused for a few moments, blinking, expecting them to fade away. I squinted, but they were still there, shining in the distance. Compass 2 was close. I turned back to see the path I had just taken, and there was only darkness. I started moving towards the lights, and didn't look back. Ah, man, the emotions bubbling up again. Promised myself I wouldn't cry. Virgil. Oh, geez. A little fly, gnat, or something going around. Mm. There's 15 chapters, though, right? Oh, geez. There's cat hair everywhere again. Jack is super hairy. Like the Castillo brothers and Isra, Virgil Fay was one of the members of the EVA team. About my age, deep diving was his family trade. He'd been raised by his grandfather, a great diver in his own time, in Burke, on the coast of France. Virgil was remarkably talented in the water, as if he'd been raised in it. He was the kind of guy you'd want around down there if things went sideways. We weren't particularly close, as our daily duties rarely overlapped. Let's see. Where was I? But since the day of the disaster, he's the one that's been on my mind the most. Even months later, when I dream of the ordeal, it's his face I see. I've traditionally regarded guilt as a selfish emotion. You either act to correct your mistakes and alleviate it, or accept that it's beyond your control to repair and move on. But when it comes to Virgil, I struggle to find reconciliation. Maybe I never will. Maybe I shouldn't. As I recount my final moments with Oceanova, I leave it to you to pass judgment. As I embarked on what would be the last leg of my journey. Whether the last escape pod was functional or not, my mental and physical deterioration increased. Two sensations were bubbling up inside me, elation and anxiety. Polar twins, both unfamiliar. My legs still ached, and the ringing in my right ear had worsened. Exhaustion in every muscle, dehydration, gnawing in the pit of my stomach. Was it the nervous excitement of impending salvation, or the creeping dread that I'd find the last hope of escape was just a mirage? I'd run the scenario a dozen times over the last 6 hours, measured every step, covered every angle, keep breathing, find others, get to the surface. The pipeline extended out of the sediment, rising up onto a metal frame that stretched out towards the facility ahead. I moved steadily forward as my oxygen crept below 25%. And then the perimeter lights brought familiar surroundings into view. I was walking the same path that Cora, JB, and I had taken during our ill-fated trip to the extractor field. I'd finally arrived at Compass 2. Even at a distance, I could see that the damage from the shock waves was severe. Massive rents marred the titanium siding. The structure had been used to house of equipment and the cargo. To house equipment and cargo, but it was also where the processed methane was stored. On some level, it was a wonder that such a powder keg was still standing. I made my way around to the more populated area of Compass 2, referred to by the crew as the porch. Still under construction, dotted with equipment of all size and shape, like toys on a lawn. Lights were still on, tiny blinding suns in the abyss. I spotted another suit laying face down in the sand. There was no way to make out who was inside, but it had to be someone. An ADS wouldn't be out here without a pilot. Somehow, not knowing was the worst part. I could feel fear surging up and down my spine, making the feelings of isolation and loneliness feel almost tangible. My emotions were starting to get the best of me, and this time I couldn't push them away. Okay, so he does find the downed ADS, which is supposed to be JJ, I believe. I could be wrong. Maybe they wrote this first and then it kind of changed. Or maybe they're like, this is number 1 and that other one was number 11 or something. Maybe they just switched the codes. It's not super important, but I would like it to be consistent. 20 yards beyond the downed ADS lay the airlock. As I approached, I could see that there was still power running to the door. With my O2 down to 16%, I used the pump jets to pick up the pace. Once past the lockout chamber door, I made my way down the hall and opened the door to the cavernous moon pool that served as a sort of welcome mat for Compass 2. With nervous relief, I used the O2 compressor on the wall to replenish my supply. The halls were brightly lit, and I could see that several of the terminals throughout the control rooms were still working, giving a false feeling of activity. No signs of life. I feathered the pump jets to hasten the trip, bustling down a series of hallways until I reached the control room. I could see the central moon pool through the windows. Unlike the other hab, it was far more spacious and open in design, allowing for easier transfer of cargo and equipment. To see the most active area of the station so lifeless was unsettling, to say the least. Holding my breath, I patched into the system, trying to find a video feed of the evacuation pod chamber. And there it was, unlaunched, undamaged, and essentially ready to go. As if it were waiting for my arrival. It wouldn't have to wait long. Leaving the control room, I entered a long corridor overlooking the meadow. 24 yellow spheres used to store the refined methane. Each several stories high, they were laid out in meticulous rows that vanished in the inky distance, a prized garden at dusk. So much death, so many friends gone. Anders Dahlreiter had essentially been the foreman of our operation. Seeing him frozen there, lifeless, made me feel more alone than I had in hours. So close to the end of my journey, the possibility the ones killed instantly might actually have been the most fortunate seemed all the more distant. Okay, so I think that's accurate, at least, that body. I entered the moon pool, making my way to the lift that would take me to the upper level of Compass 2. It included crew's offices and some areas of storage, and something like a foreman's office that overlooked the factory floor. As the lift lurched upwards, I could hear my heartbeat thrumming louder, surging through my ears. The cocktail of stress and adrenaline surging through my veins kept me from collapsing. Just one last corridor leading to the escape pod, and at the end, the final door, vault-like in appearance, appropriate given the treasure it held. The room was dark, but I could still see the pod at the other side, pure elation. It was ready to go, and so was I. The pod stood tall and proud, nestled within a durable tube of reddish lucite, a little like a giant version of the pneumatic tubes that Banks once used. Even considering my bulky diving suit, there was room to spare. The hatch sent a muted thump reverberating through my titanium armor as I sealed it behind me. I started the launch sequence. The primary monitor... I'm sorry, I was just looking at the number of pages left. The primary monitor displayed live video feeds from outside the pod. Transfixed, impatient, I felt my breathing quicken again as the automated launch procedure began. The thrumming of engines and other moving pieces made it clear. My exodus wasn't going to be a quiet one. As I braced myself, a message crackled through the speakers in my helmet. Stand clear, evacuation commencing. Something felt off. I pushed the feeling away. Alarms echoed through the hab, and then movement in my peripheral vision. I froze. The door to the pod room was now open, and a figure approached. My imagination, surely, had to be. Stand clear, 30 seconds to evacuation. I could see clearly, my eyes were playing no tricks. The shadow grew larger as it advanced. Between the helmet and the lucite pane, I was afforded only a narrow view of the room. The alert lights crept to the edge of the pod's window as the shadow loomed, snuffing them out. I could see a red glow about the chest height, getting brighter by the moment. Then came certain clarity. I was seeing another survivor. Thought I heard fireworks. Maybe. Maybe you'll hear it in a minute. Stand clear, 15 seconds to evacuation. Pure, unfettered panic. Okay, yeah, that's them. They're too quiet, though. I don't think you'll hear them. I cycled through menus in search of an override, denial fueling futility. But I already knew, once the launch sequence starts, there's no turning back. Fury, frustration. I slammed my metal gauntlet against the terminal. Turning to face the reality of the situation, I could finally fearfully make out who was inside. Virgil, eyes wide with fear. I could see he was shouting, but all I heard was silence. Stand clear, 10 seconds to evacuation. The countdown continued. The pod engines accelerated, shaking the vessel violently. I couldn't look away. Had I known, I would have waited. I should have waited. Minutes, seconds. As the countdown came to a close, he backed up a few steps. I placed my hands on the window, pounding in slow motion. One and then the other. I don't know why. I couldn't think of anything else to do. I was going to make it, but somehow that no longer mattered. Virgil didn't deserve this. No one does. Stand clear. Evacuation in 5, 4, 3, 2. Even inside the suit, I could feel the violence of the launch. And then Virgil vanished, swallowed by a cloud of debris in motion. The acceleration and propulsion within the ADS set my teeth rattling as I strained to keep my face from slamming against the confines of the helmet. Tears filled my vision, and I lost focus, up and up, into an endless span of nothingness until merciful darkness overtook me. Yeah, so I had some spicy tea before this, trying to clear my my stuffed nose and stuff. It didn't really work so well, apparently. Alcohol kind of helps, though. Right, Jack? You want some? Number 15. Open air. Engineers on the surface had received an automated emergency signal from comms triggered by the flooding of Compass 1. The Coast Guard, a crew of Navy emergency medical technicians, and several ships from the Averill Aquanautics were dispatched on the rescue mission. In the end, it was a seaplane from the Chilean Navy that found me. They would recover no others. One of the hospital nurses told me I'd been drifting for close to 5 hours. My breathing had slowed while I was unconscious, decreasing my O2 consumption. Most likely, I wouldn't have made it otherwise. I don't understand that, right? Because he's on the surface. Shouldn't the Yeah, I don't quite get that. It should have been like the pod. I don't know, maybe it would have had an emergency venting thing, like it's at the surface. Who knows? Much of the actual rescue is still a blur, or it probably closes and just seals itself. So if there's water inside, you're screwed, right? Much of the actual rescue is still a blur, something I've pieced together from the accounts of those who saved me. Images more than memories. From the time I first blacked out in the escape pod until I found myself in bed, shackled to an IV drip. The only thing I really remember is being cracked free of my titanium cocoon and the shock of exposure to the open air. A certifiable nut, trapped too long in its shell. I awake to a faint buzzing noise, barely audible behind the alarms. A shadow blocks the sunlight, then it's gone, blinding me all over again. I can see precious little on the outside, and hear even less. With agonizing effort, I tap my helmet. Confusion, first, followed by muffled shouting. I'm swimming in and out of consciousness, then frighteningly aware of it. Working in concert, my rescuers loosen the seals of my suit. Then after something just shy of eternity, they're removing my helmet, their voices growing clear and louder. Choking, crying, and gagging, I'm born again into the blinding light. For the first time in 3 months, I take a breath of fresh air. Whoa. Allergies a killer, man. Allergies. Epilogue. Whether measured in minutes, hours, or months, it was soon after I surfaced that I found myself facing a new challenge. Learning to live again. In ways I can't quite articulate, in surviving, my very identity was reinvented. I'd been dubbed me a true survivor. The everyman engineer, who used only his wits and knowledge to overcome the odds and find his way home. A good story. But it's the kind of label that sometimes scratches at the back of your head. Virgil, JB, and Cora, they were survivors too, every bit as much as me. The only difference is they're not here to enjoy the closure we all deserve. And if I have indeed gotten what I deserve, then I owe it all to them to earn the second chance at life. I'm moving forward, one foot in front of the other. It's the only way I know how. Yeah. Okay. About the authors. Kipling Kip Mattis was born in 1980 in Lompoc, California. He graduated from California Polytechnic State Institute University 2002 with Bachelor of Applied Science degrees in Computer and Mechanical Engineering before joining the Oceanova Initiative. I was going to say Institute, but Oceanova Initiative. He worked on numerous energy research and engineering projects. Mr. Mattis currently lives in Berck-sur-Mer on the coast of France. Hell or Highwater, Surviving Oceanova is his first book. Alex Bayman lives in the beautiful Pacific Northwest with a little gray cat named Jenny. His lifelong fascination with the strange ensured his eventual focus on writing horror, delighting in both entertaining and troubling the dreams of those who read his work. So I wonder if he's like the head writer for the game, maybe. And then Alessandro Fiari, is an author and journalist in the Bay Area. As a writer for Tech Radar, Game Revolution, IGN, and Destructoid, he has spent over 5 years crafting features about the most interesting aspects of the tech and gaming world. A regular among the San Francisco community of writers looking for the next great story to tell, he spends his off time weathering the strange Northern California climate and crafting fiction of his own. So I suspect he was maybe the guy that wrote this book. It's hard to say. It's hard to say, but that is it. That is it. Let me get rid of this. There's Manny. Oh wait. Bring back Firefox back up. Put it right there. There we go. Boom. All right, well that's it. Only the crazy eyes of Manny to watch over you. But no, that was all right. You know, the book was okay. It didn't need to be done. I'd rather. I mean, if I had to honestly do my take of it, it needed to be proofread. That's the first thing. Second, shore it up with the actual accurate details from the game. But aside from that, it's not bad. It's, you know, I mean, the game itself blows it out of the water. You know, if you had to choose between this or the game is way better. Way better. But it's not bad. It's a good enough read. I'm not, you know, sad that I read it. You know, it's probably about 4 hours we're talking. Gave me an appreciation for people that do audiobooks and stuff. It's pretty yeah. Not bad. I mean, you know, if one of the other games that I play after this has something like this as well, I'd probably do that also. I still don't know how I'm gonna do it. I don't think I'm gonna merge them all together because I don't really want to put a 4-hour file onto YouTube. I don't know. I haven't really decided yet. But yeah, Narcosis, pretty awesome, and very much like Jacob's Ladder. You know, it's like the retelling of how he died. I guess I just spoiled Jacob's Ladder in case you haven't seen it, but it's still worth the watch anyway. You know, Jacob's Ladder, especially if you're into horror, Jacob's Ladder was one of the inspirations for the Silent Hill series. It's where, especially where they got like the shaky head thing for like the horses, like the carousel horses, like the more of a Silent Hill 3 thing, I think, than maybe 1. I can't remember. But anyway, that's all for today. Thank you guys so much for your time and attention. I really hope you did appreciate this. Um, like I said, Hell or High Water is not bad. It's an interesting take on the Narcosis DLC. Like it's DLC that's an actual book, which is kind of cool, honestly. Very few games seem to do this now. Like usually the DLC is like, oh, there's a soundtrack, or oh, there's, you know, I kind of expected like another scenario, although I didn't know about the DLC at the beginning. Um, it was only like I saw the news. When you go to Steam and you have like the little feed where the game is, or you have your library and it's like play, and then there's news underneath. It was down there. It was like anniversary DLC now available or something. I'm like, what? So that's kind of cool. But yeah, thanks again, you guys. I hope to see you guys next time. And until then, take care.